Coming up on The Returned.
NDE really emphasize is when we leave the physical body and our experience here has ended, it's no different than waking up from a dream. We never leave. There is no here or there. There's only now and frequency.
Hi, and welcome to The Returned. Here's to everything we'll discover together. Hi, and welcome to The Returned, a place where we share near-death stories, out-of-body experiences, spiritual awakenings, signs from spirit, and journeys of healers and lightworkers from around the world. Oh, my God, you guys. Today, I'm not even kidding you. I have just been chatting with our guest, and we're way over the time when we were supposed to start recording because her information, she is amazing, and I cannot wait to go into her full story with you today. So I'm honored to be able to sit with Laura McGlynn. After 25 years of chronic pain, 15 spinal surgeries, and a point where she had accepted her own imminent death, something extraordinary happened. And you'll have to wait to find that out. Laura, welcome to The Returned.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're
Thrilled to be
so
here.
welcome. I'm so excited about this conversation, actually. And I actually been taking all your time before this. So it's really going to be good to have this talk. And so happy you're here.
Yeah, we should have had the video rolling for
I do this all the
conversation.
time to people. I know it's crazy, but it's all good. We're here now and we're not going to miss a beat. So, Laura, before we go and we talk about the moment everything changed, I was wondering if you'd be okay with starting with who you were. I spent a little bit of time reading about you, and it's very, very clear to me that you've walked through a level of pain and surrender and endurance most people probably never will ever truly understand. So before crossing over to that and talking about your transformation, could you give us a brief idea who you were?
Absolutely. To begin with, I think what set the stage for everything was the experience of some specific like childhood trauma. And what I've come to understand about that kind of thing is it was the gift of my incarnation because the result of it created who I am now. I carried a lot of anger and resentment about these things, and that led to experiences. By the time I was, let's see, I think I made it through being a teenager and all of that, but probably just because I was so into sports and I decided at the age of 15 that I was going to get a Division I basketball scholarship. And, teachers laughed at me and it didn't look like that would happen, but something in me knew that it would. And it did. Carrying buried trauma has certain results. And when I had alcohol for the first time, I realized like, oh, I can hang out with people and be bubbly and outgoing and this really helps. So I started drinking when I was in college, but I also hurt my back as a freshman when I was 18 and had my first surgery. So that was when I learned that I could medicate with alcohol. uh, anyway, I ended up giving up basketball after a few years and swore I would never be involved in a uh, organized sport again, because when I was 18, I didn't realize then, but that was the first dark night of the soul that I really went through, because basketball was my whole identity. And like the WNBA had begun when I was in college, and I just thought, well, this is perfect. It couldn't be better. And it just didn't work out the way that I had wanted. So I finished college, got a job, and uh, during periods of my 20s, my back got worse, and I was on disability for a little while. Uh, and I noticed, though, that because I was battling with depression, and in my 20s, I got diagnosed with borderline personality. I also, what was the other one? Oh, PTSD. So the combination of those three mental uh, illnesses was pretty difficult to deal with, but adding in a lot of nerve pain and back issues made it challenging in my 20s. So I ended up off of work for a little while and then bounced back and found triathlon. And so I got really into that. And within 2 years of starting, was working with one of the world's best coaches. And that fed my ego just perfectly, because that's all there really was of me, was my ego identity. And it just seemed like no matter what identity I took on, I could conquer it. And I was never happy. Like nothing was ever enough. And so the progression of things uh, went as they do when someone is using like a chemical. Uh, Triathlon became less important. And then when I was 33, I herniated a disc in a race. And I always like to tell people I still came in third. So overachievers, I never looked at myself as an overachiever, but what overachieving is perfectionism. And perfectionism is something that I was driven by, but was completely unaware that I had, because I thought if I was a perfectionist, then I'd be perfect. And I hated myself, so I couldn't be perfect. Um, and fast forward at the age of 33, I didn't want to have another surgery because my first one was at 18, and I swore I would never do that again. I didn't want to even see a surgeon, but a physiatrist told me that my right leg was starting to disappear and the muscle was dying. So it became kind of an emergency, and I had surgery. And uh, at that point, that was the beginning of uh, 15 surgeries between 2010 and 2020. And towards the end of that period, my life had become really, really small. I was awarded SSDI at the age of 38, which for like a back issue is pretty unheard of. And I realized after my first failed fusion that I did not know what pain was. Like that there's levels of pain. And I hadn't really experienced intense, prolonged pain until I experienced the first failed fusion. And it wasn't a coincidence that I got a bone infection during the surgery and I needed another surgery. And so all of these things kept happening. And the surgeries would take 6 months to heal. And you wouldn't really know until 5 months in whether or not they worked. And so in 2016, I had this corrective surgery where I got another bone infection. And so I had 3 surgeries like in 1 month. Um, and that was really the beginning of the end for me. Like my drinking was out of control. I was on opiates for a long time because after 3 surgeries, um, it it just kept getting like I would start healing and then they would open it back up. And anyway, but there were a few events that happened, and at the end of 2016, I lost my job that I thought I would be at until I retired, that I loved, and that really hurt, like because the company had been wonderful, but I was having like surgery once or twice a year and maybe getting back for like 6 months and then I'd be out again. So I totally understood that they needed to let me go, but I was carrying so much guilt because I felt like all of it was my fault. Even though nobody would ever choose something like that. Uh, so I ended up deciding to go to my primary care. This was at the very end of 2016, and asking her for a prescription for Dilaudid because I had come off of the opiates in the fall and I was in so much pain that I just decided I'm going to see, something has to change. And I knew that that was a bad choice. Like it wasn't going to lead me anywhere positive. I knew that and I didn't care. Uh, so a few more years passed by and I got the opportunity to my spine finally got stable enough that I had a spinal cord stimulator put in, which blocks the signal of pain to uh, the brain. And that helped me enough that I was able to go back to work. I started a job it was April of 2020. And then COVID happened and I was put on furlough. So that was my excuse to sit at home and basically drink and use, and uh, was really, really, really sick. And I had been diagnosed with liver issues like a year and a half before that, and just decided like I wasn't going to do anything about it, like because I had tried AA and I still went to meetings a lot of the time and put on a face like everything was fine. So in 2020, I ended up at home quite a bit and was on furlough. So I I really didn't leave the house much unless it was like to go to the liquor store or whatever. Um, and at a certain point, I understood I wasn't going to recover. I wasn't going to live from this. And that time was coming very quickly. Uh, I'm trying to think of what it was. There was a day in June where I had a doctor's appointment. The spinal cord stimulator that I had, it was 2.5 years old. It was supposed to last 10 years. The battery died. And the company couldn't explain why, but I have a better understanding of why now. Uh, so I went to this doctor's appointment and I heard a song on the radio as I was driving there. And at the time I had a Jeep, and in the summer, I just loved having the doors and the windows off, and the roof off. And the song, like, it was like it activated something in me. And I went to the doctor's appointment and they said finally that they would replace this spinal cord stimulator because without it, the pain was worse. So I was really happy and relieved that that was going to happen. I left there and started driving and listened to this song again. Uh, and I didn't want to stop driving. Like, I ended up driving down the coast where I live, and I drove for the rest of the day. because the way I felt, I couldn't understand. And I didn't want the feeling to end. Like at a certain point, I remember exactly where I was, what road I was on, and what point it was where the thought went through my head, I don't know what this is, but this is better than any drug I've ever felt before. So I went home that night, and this is kind of an odd part of the story. I turned on the television and started watching this show called 60 Days In, which it was an A&E series, and I had never seen the first season of it. So I had never heard the story of why the show was created. Anyway, it was about a prison that was overrun with crime, and the sheriff didn't know what to do. So he asked a group of people from the outside to go into the prison, like undercover, and be his eyes and ears. So this whole process happened, and A&E decided to film it. And I decided to watch it because I thought it was going to be about, how the prisoners were all just like everyone else. And, we all judge them and we shouldn't. And what it ended up being for me was about these participants. And I was looking at their personalities, and it was funny because one of them was really, really observant, and I could see myself in this person, and I could see my thinking in this person, and like my disordered thinking in this person. And I realized that she was creating all of her own problems, because the way the show was arranged was they'd film everything, all the interactions of everyone, and then they would take people out one at a time and interview them. They interviewed the prisoners as well, and just told everyone in the prison that they were filming a documentary about prisons. So there were literally only like 2 people in the whole operation who knew that there were people from the outside in the prison who weren't actually prisoners. And hearing her account of what happened in these different conflicts and seeing the conflict, I realized, like, oh my God, that's what I do. That's how my thinking creates these problems. Anyway, I watched the show for 12 hours straight, which is something I never did at that time. And so I watched it like all night long. And at a certain point, I was having trouble like pressing the buttons on the remote because I was so tired. So I thought I need to get at least a few hours of sleep. So I shut the television off and I tried to go to sleep. But that's not what happened. I didn't know what downloading was. I had never heard that term before. I had no idea it was possible. But all of a sudden, I started receiving, and all of these thoughts started coming into my awareness. I was shown this circle, like a giant circle, and all of the behavior of all of these participants that were in the show was all part of this circle. And what I realized was that it was all in me. And that was the beginning. I laid in bed for a while and I would think of a question. And right when the question came into my mind, my cell phone made a noise, and it was a text message. I wasn't speaking to many people then. So I didn't get a lot of text messages. The phone never really rang. But this day, at this time, people were sending me messages with the answers to my questions. And they weren't like yes or no or maybe. It was like a sentence that was the answer to the question that had gone through my mind. Now, obviously, you hear something like that and you can't believe it. I was experiencing it, not believing it, Um, so that happened for a while until I had the thought, like, I had talked to this medium uh, years before that, and I would call her and leave a message, and she'd call back. Like, she never answered the phone, like, because the phone would ring in her office, and she didn't live in her office. So she would get the message, call you back, and schedule the appointment. Well, I would call her drunk and leave a message wanting to talk with her. And then when she would call me back, I would be sober enough to be frightened, like, about the whole idea of asking her anything. And so I never made an appointment. I saw her like once, 10 years before this happened. And anyway, I had called her a bunch of times over that previous winter, and we never set an appointment out. And that day, laying in bed, I said to myself, if something's happening, she's going to answer the phone if I call. So I called, and the phone rang, and it then just went silent. There was no message, like nothing. And I thought, oh, okay, never mind, nothing's happening. So, I hung up and tried to go back to sleep. And then I thought, oh, well, I don't have a very good cell phone signal here. So I tried again, and she answered the phone. Uh, and she said that she wouldn't be able to speak with me, connect with me for about 2 weeks, and was that okay? And I said to her, I was like, well, but I need help now. I need to understand what's happening now. And she was like, well, you said you've seen me before. Your voice sounds familiar. And then she started explaining or describing my Nana. And she said something about my mother that was true. And I didn't know that she could connect with me through a phone. Like I had only been in front of her, and I really didn't do anything. Like, I wasn't involved in anything spiritual. I knew nothing. So I had no idea that was possible. Anyway, we had this long conversation, and it ended with with me saying to her, what's happening with me right now? And all she said was that what's happening with you, and actually what I said to her was, I know you're not going to tell me, either because you don't have access to the information or because it's morally wrong. I was knowing answers before they were coming. And what she said was that what was happening for me usually happens for people much later in life. And the feeling I got when she said that was, okay, I don't want to know anymore. And so we got off the phone, and I realized after some thinking that I had never gone to any kind of long-term rehab. Like, I had gone to detoxes for alcohol, but I had never had any kind of treatment for opiate addiction. I was always afraid that my back, like, I'd need another surgery, or that
Hmm.
I would be in too much pain. So I didn't even want to look at it. But that day, I realized that that's what I needed to do. And that feeling of being joyful was still in me. So I went around the house, and I had Dilaudid stockpiled, like, in different places in my house, which is a really powerful opiate. I threw it all away because I wanted to get rid of it while I still felt motivated. And I decided that I needed to go to like a 3-month program. So I needed to make 2 phone calls. One was to my cat sitter, who I knew from AA, and I told her what was happening, and she asked me if I was writing things down, and I was like, I can't write this down. I can't process like anything. I think if I'm meant to remember, I will. So she said she'd help in any way that she could. The next phone call that I had to make, I did not understand at the time. And it actually took me a few years to really understand why I needed to make this call. It was one of the things I was shown when I was trying to sleep was like this basket of kittens. And I had to tell my friend Joyce that God was so proud of her and happy for her for taking care, or not happy for her, but like grateful to her for taking care of his most precious creatures. She runs a shelter, and she fosters a lot of kittens and goes into situations that are like, really difficult, and then takes care of these cats. So I ended up meeting her because I adopted 2 handicapped kittens that she was fostering. And at a certain period of my life, my relationship with my family kind of dissolved. And when that happened, Joyce like welcomed me into her family, which was really wonderful. And one of the things though that I had to tell her was that I hadn't been sober in a long time. And when I got on the phone with her that day, I sat down in my front bedroom, which looks out over like the ocean. And I noticed right away that there was this big dark cloud like over me. And what was strange was I could look out and see the sun beyond it. And I could see the sun to the left, like about a quarter of a mile away, like to the left of it. And I could see the end of it on the right. And literally, it looked like the cloud was right over me. And it's not unusual at that time of the year for thunderstorms to roll in. They go west to east and they pass through pretty quickly. And the weather changes really fast. But this cloud was like one big cloud that was just sitting there. So I told her the first thing that because I told her the easier thing first, that I hadn't been sober in a long time. Like for most people, that would be a pretty difficult thing to say. But anyway, when I did that, a lightning bolt came down from the cloud. And at this point, I knew something was already happening. I didn't need lightning like to tell me that something massive was changing. But I thought it was a coincidence, and I laughed and I took a picture and I told her, I was like, you won't believe this, you know? But about 10 minutes later, I told her the second thing about God being so pleased with her. And when I said it, another lightning bolt came down from the cloud. And there was never it didn't rain. There wasn't any thunder. The pictures that I have are time stamped. About 20 minutes after the second lightning bolt, I took a picture when we ended the call and it was bright and sunny. And from that point until I started getting like pulled out of my body, I don't have a ton of memory. Like I went to bed that night and I didn't use anything. I had thrown everything away. I was laying in bed and started feeling this feeling internally that I had never felt before. And it was terrifying because the only thought that I had that was associated with it was, I'm not going to get to say goodbye to anyone. Because part of me knew what was happening, but my conscious mind as Laura did not. As this started, I got more and more terrified. And I always tell this story when I'm at this point. Like I compare the terror of this to being in a really bad car accident where I rolled over on the highway, and it was a long one. It took forever. That was less frightening. This was something else. So I was laying in bed, and part of the story with my seeing the medium the very first time was at the end of the visit, she asked me if I had any questions. And I said, well, is my Nana here? And she said, oh, she's definitely here. And the thought went through my head, like, that's BS. Like she said that too fast. And right when that thought, that's BS went through my head, she said the name Janet. Well, Janet's my mother's name, and it's not that common of a name. And then she started to describe this necklace that I didn't have on. It was a cross and this medal that was pinned on my mother the day she was born. And the medal always meant something to my mother. And long story there. But I was told by the medium that day that I didn't have to wear it, but to always have it with me. The metal was really flimsy and I was afraid of losing it. So what I ended up doing was just buying a different metal. I found out that it was a miraculous metal. Like, I didn't know what the metal was. And when I found out the story behind the miraculous metal, I was like blown away, being an alcoholic and understanding the importance of asking for help, which I never did. And anyway, I had this necklace on as this thing was happening within my body. And my cat came up and started biting the necklace. And it was such a strange thing. I knew right away that my Nana was with me when he did that. And I don't know where this idea came from. The only thing I could think to do was meditate, because I was so afraid and didn't know what was happening that I just figured I'd been through traumatic things before. I would just get through it. And, which doesn't make any sense. People have asked me, like, why didn't you call an ambulance? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? It just, nothing else occurred to me. And so I held the metal, and when I breathed in, I said the word love. And when I breathed out, I said the word Nana. And within like 3 or 4 cycles of that, I went from being in sheer terror to being in the most ecstatic bliss, like, that I didn't know was possible. And there was my Nana right in front of me. And, I went right up to her and gave her a hug and told her how much I missed her. And I felt the grief that I had carried my whole life in missing her literally fall off of me like bricks. To tell the rest of the story about being on the other side is hard because there is no time on the other side. So everything happens like all at once. My biggest question was, why would I be chosen for something like this? Like, I really felt like I had wasted my life. Like, I hated myself. And what was explained to me was actually what the very first thing I heard was, your suffering is over. You've learned the lessons you needed to learn. Going forward, you will experience pain differently. And I just wanted to know, like, well, why would I get to have this happen? And the answer was, this happens for everyone. It's just your time. You don't know you're experiencing gnosis until you ask a question. And suddenly you're given this answer that is answering far more than what you would have known to ask. So the answer that came into me was that what was happening for me happens for everyone when they're in their soul's last lifetime on earth. And I grew up Christian, so reincarnation was never something that I really spent any time thinking about. I thought, like, I was very open to everything and not really into religion by the time I had this experience. So I just didn't know. And I was okay with that. So I was asked if I wanted to come back. And my answer was very literally, hell no, there's nothing of that world that interests me in any way. But then I was shown my parents, and they're both here on earth and very healthy. And at the same time, I was also shown what would be possible. And so the feeling of, like, I had just understood everything there was to understand. Every question, I no longer had questions in that state. And I thought, like, if I could give this to my parents, like, I would love to. The strange thing was, again, everything happens all at once. I understood at the same time that when my consciousness left this reality, the reality no longer existed. So it actually didn't matter if I came back. And if I did come back, it didn't matter the human that I chose to be. Like I could have been Mother Teresa or like, you know, um, a serial killer, and it literally would have no bearing on anything. It's funny because I still don't really understand that, like, fully. Um, my guess is just that my path was already set. So when you embody a certain amount of love, you literally cannot make decisions that will hurt someone else in a way that is not for their highest good. Um, I'm just anticipating questions when I say that. So, um, anyway, I was shown this being, and the being didn't have a face. And I said, well, that's an angel. Why are you showing me that? And this being could go back and forth from heaven to earth. And when they were on earth, they were just as joyful. And I got to feel the feeling that this being felt. And it was like nothing I had ever felt on earth. Um, I was shown this big, wide open area that looked like Utah or Arizona. And the being was in a car that had no roof. And I could see the music trailing from behind the car. And I understand now why I liked the Jeep so much with the doors and the sound. And it's because when we leave the physical body and we become like, we vibrate, like everything vibrates, and there's like, you're immersed in sound. It's a different, you become the sound, like we're each a song, or a note, a frequency. uh anyway, this being could go back and forth from heaven to earth, and I didn't understand why anyone would leave heaven to come to earth. But I was really excited. And the last part of the experience, I was floating on this massive body of water with my Nana. And I didn't want to leave, but I was really excited. And I said to her, there's so much I need to know. And she said, well, you'll get it in bits and pieces as you go. And she said, you can come back whenever you want. And I didn't understand for a while. Like I knew when she said that meant I could come back through meditation, but I was never a meditator. So I didn't know how that would work. Anyway, the next day, or when I was back in my body, everything felt different. Like air tasted different. I could feel the air. It felt like I was in this bubble and it was just me and God. And I was clairaudient in the beginning, but I thought that the way my body felt, like when I first came back into it, all the pain was gone. I thought it was that way because I was making the choices that God wanted me to make. And when I started to get fearful after like a day or two of that what if I don't know what God wants me to do? What will I do? That was the first thought of fear. And very quickly, my all the pain came back. Like, and it was it, my bubble was not fully burst. Like I still obviously like I was still on cloud nine. It was just that my body now had pain again that had disappeared. Um, about a month after the experience, I had been having thoughts come into my mind about A Course in Miracles. I had bought it years before. And when I started reading it, I was so impressed with the book that I put up a quote or a post about it on Facebook. And I said, I just started this book that some people say is life-changing. I think I need to get a highlighter because of quotes like the following. And I included this quote: healing rests on charity, and charity is the way of perceiving the perfection of another, even when you cannot perceive it in yourself. And anyway, for about a month or two after my experience, the thought of A Course in Miracles was like being pushed on me, and not by a human, but by spirit. And one day someone had said to me this word. I've always been super literal. And when I heard this word, I had never heard it before. And someone said, oh, well, it's the last word in the Bible. And so I was like, I need to check that. So I have this Bible that I got when I was in first grade, and it sits in a drawer that never gets opened and it's covered in dust. Well, that day I went to open it and the Bible was nowhere to be found. A Course in Miracles was in its place, and I did not put it there. So I was like, completely blown away. So I took the book out of the drawer. I put it on my coffee table where I promptly stared at it for about 6 weeks before opening it. I had a big block about reading it again. But when I read the introduction, when I reread it, because I only got a couple hundred pages in, maybe like 100 pages when I started it years before, I read the introduction and like over and over. And I realized, like, oh my God, this is going to be my manual. Because what I was keenly aware of when I first came back was that all of my judgments had been removed from me. What was explained to me on the other side was that my life had been perfect. It had gone exactly the way it was supposed to. It was just the way that I had judged my choices that made me really think it was a waste. But I was told that the first half of my life needed to be as difficult as it was, with the range of difficulties I experienced, so that during the second half of my life, I could have empathy for a wide range of people. I was also told that my thinking was created so that I would believe deeply very quickly. And now in 2025, like, it makes sense. There's so much more information that is available about what's happening on the planet. But back in 2020, like, I hadn't been exposed to any of this. So I had no vocabulary. I didn't know what an ascension lifetime was. I didn't know what ascension was. That was something Jesus did, and Jesus only, you know? Um, so anyway, I started reading the course, and within a month or two, it's not a coincidence. So this was 5 years ago. 5 years ago, right now, I was in the hospital. I had the bone infection that I got in 2016 reactivated. And December 1st of 2020, I was in the hospital and very, very sick. And I ended up having it was my 16th surgery because all the hardware needed to come out of my spine. And this hospital experience, it was a couple weeks long, and it was brutal. It was the worst by far that I have ever had. That there was a lot of screaming, and I was someone who could put up with a lot. Uh, Anesthesia got messed up, like so many different things happened. And all I could think of was, God, you said I wasn't going to suffer anymore. And the thought, this couldn't have been mine. The thought, it couldn't have come from me, that, oh, well, if I'm suffering, I must be choosing to suffer. And I remember the moment where I decided that I wouldn't suffer any longer. Um, and things have gotten better, like, since then. Um, but it was a big, like, turning point, and something that I think had to happen. Like I had to lose it, like, because I had always held things in. Um, I always put myself at the bottom of the list. And what my ego would tell me was just awful. The things that I would say to myself, and actually even in just saying that, I never said those things. Like I attracted thoughts, and those thoughts were in resonance with how I was feeling. And I chose to give those thoughts my energy. But I understand where thoughts come from now, and I didn't then. So I've always said that the way I spoke to myself, I would never speak to anyone else that way, you know? But this moment in the hospital, I realized, like, wait a minute, I matter. And the whole floor heard. I won't get into that, but anyway. Um, so oddly enough, about a week before I was set to go back to work, after 4 months of being off after this surgery, I was in a ton of pain from recovering, and I just had all this nerve pain that was new from the infection, and I didn't know how I would get back into working again. I didn't know physically how I could do it. I had 10 inches of my spine, like stripped. And um, anyway, this one day I saw the documentary on Amazon, Heal. I think it came out in 2021. And at the end of it, there was someone who was working with this man who called himself a divine conduit, like a healer. And this woman who had autoimmune diseases, I focused on that because I had like a list of autoimmune diseases. And as he was working on her, um, she started to cry and she said, I don't know who I am without being sick. And at the time, I had read all of this stuff. I was in the hospital reading A Course in Miracles, and it says, you create illness with your belief in it. And that drove me nuts. I wanted to take the book and throw it against the wall. I imagined its pages like flying out because I thought to myself, why would I ever do this to myself?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but in that moment of watching Heal and seeing this woman say what she said, like I started to cry because I realized that pain had become my entire identity. Like there was nothing left of me. Oddly enough, there never really I never had a strong human identity. And humans, we tend to label people like shifting sense of self or unstable identity is criteria for diagnosis for so many mental illnesses. But guess what? We're not human in eternity. So in March of 2021, the day after I watched Heal, I woke up for the first time and all the arthritis in my spine like was gone. I felt amazing and like so much so that it was like a movie. I was used to like sitting in a chair for a while and not being able to straighten up and like get up or down easily, and all of that was gone. I was literally like dancing through my house. And that began this process of my body healing. Like I was supposed to take thyroid medication for the rest of my life. Like it just disappeared because I
Wow.
focused on the embodiment of unconditional love, which we already are. So all that really is a letting go. It's a release of beliefs that we've been taught and conditioned by that just aren't true.
Okay.
Um, and the process has been incredible because as I looked at myself, and it was not easy. The first couple years after my NDE, I had periods of time where like I wanted to go home more than ever. Like, I had many years of suicidal thoughts coming to me before the NDE. So I was used to that. And I learned, like, just, I didn't entertain them. And it's weird because at the age of 39, they stopped. And the NDE was, I was 42. It was shortly before my 43rd birthday. But after, I knew what was on the other side, I knew what was waiting. Uh, I kicked myself over and over for making the choice. Why did I come back? My family didn't want to hear about it. Like, my parents would get upset if I talked about it. And so it felt like, why did I do this? Um, but that didn't last long. Like, I would watch NDE videos after this happened and hear people speaking who had 20 or 30 years to integrate their experience, and they were speaking from a way different point of view. Like, what people don't understand, because so many people have contacted me and said, oh, I wish I could have an NDE. And it's like, I wouldn't wish that on anyone. You don't need to have an NDE.
Right.
Like, you absolutely don't. It's so, it can be very destabilizing, you know?
Absolutely.
Um, I found one of the things that was explained to me on the other side was that my mental illness diagnosis, like all of the mental illness that I suffered from, was all a gift. And that uh people with my particular problems create a lot of their own suffering with their thinking. But that is what allows them to learn so much more. It's just very painful. Um, and so anyway, what the process really was this process of forgiving myself for all of the thoughts that I entertained that I judged as something other than perfect. Because we can't be anything but perfect, but we don't know what anything's for. So how can we judge perfection or know what perfection is if we don't know what something's for? We don't know how to use it. So we're all given gifts, but in duality, gifts to be used have to be balanced. So for my story, I experienced the darkness that's available here in this reality during the first half of my life. And because of that, I get to have moments of the most intense bliss now that make me so grateful for everything that I went through. Like, we judge things as bad or that shouldn't have happened because we don't know what we're supposed to learn from it. If we did know what we were supposed to learn from it, we wouldn't have needed to go through the experience. So, like, what I learned is that the universe can only deliver to me what is perfect for me. And if I want something different, then I have to change what I believe about myself. And in the beginning, those changes were huge and they were hard to, like, accomplish.
I bet.
Mainly just because my mind refused to surrender. And it just felt like there were so many levels of surrender. You surrender this, you surrender that. It's like you're climbing a mountain and you reach the peak and you think you're gonna, like, enjoy the summit, but what you see is a whole new mountain range beyond that one. But it's funny because as I've become more content, I don't hold resistance to things. And I know that it's only my thoughts that I can suffer.
Yeah.
So life has just become much easier. And it's this process that things like just continue to get better and better and better. Because as love, which is what we are, we grow into ourselves. Like we're toroidal fields of energy, which is like the shape of an apple. And if you imagine how energy kind of moves like through the center and it expands outward naturally as energy comes down and through the middle, that's what happens in our reality. So when you have an experience like this, you literally have the ability to change every person that you come into contact with without even speaking to them, just by being the vibration of unconditional love, because you've been exposed to it. Now you remember what it is. And everyone has that memory. It's just in the subconscious. So people will be attracted to you in ways they can't explain, like, because it's not a conscious thing, you know? So it's been a really strange uh, process, because I was so closed off. I lived with my heart like completely guarded. As someone who had borderline, I didn't have this like long history of failed relationships. What I did was I felt like love was so painful that it wasn't worth the suffering. So I closed myself off like completely and isolated myself. And my world was just it was like the room I'm sitting in, you know? Um, so it it couldn't be more different now. And I'm sure whenever I tell this story, different things come into my mind as like
Mhm.
what is needed for me to tell of the story, you know, in that moment. So I'm sure there's things that I've forgotten, or not forgotten, but just didn't
Mhm.
say. Um,
Amazing.
when you have an experience of eternity, it's really hard to try to put it um, in a linear form, for like to try to fit it into a brain that functions on linear thinking um, is difficult. Um,
Mm.
but the last thing that I'll say about it is A Course in Miracles for many of us is something that we chose before we incarnated. And when I had my 1 year anniversary for my NDE, I opened up Facebook and my memories popped up, and there was the the quote, the post that I had put up about the course. I posted it 5 years to the day before I died. And when I saw that, like my body had already healed. So I knew like that, but it was still something, like, because I've needed so much proof. Like, and a few, a couple months ago, uh, I was driving along and the thought came into my mind. I don't know what the exact date was that the course was published. I knew it came out in 1976, but I didn't know what the date was. And I had gotten other messages like through spirit about it and was just really curious. Um, and I thought like, oh, maybe it was like around the time that I was conceived, because I was born in November, or no, I was, that was November. I was born in August of 1977. So I looked it up and I couldn't believe when I saw the date. The course was published on June 26th, 1976, exactly 44 years before I died. And I was sitting in the car, and when I got this information, a song was playing, and the title was in Spanish, And somehow I knew I needed to know, like, I needed to get that title translated. It was a Guia de Oro. And I'm like, what does a Guia de Oro mean? So I Googled it, and it means golden eagle. And the lyrics of the song, when I translated them, it was like, whoa, because an eagle is a big, one of my favorite sayings in A Course in Miracles is, ask not the sparrow how the eagle soars, for those with little wings haven't accepted for themselves the power to share with you. And it's not a coincidence that 2 days ago, I've lived where I've lived for 13 years. And a few years ago, there's a pond across the street. Uh, a few years ago, people started saying there's an eagle that lives here, or two eagles. And I saw pictures, and I really wanted to get a picture. So I would go out for walks with my camera and like looking, and never saw one. Uh, I have a meditation chair where I sit, and there's windows. And um, the other day, I got a video of this eagle, and he swooped down. I could not believe this when I looked at it frame by frame. A fish, he didn't reach into the water to get the fish. The fish literally jumped out of the water into the eagle's talons. And it couldn't have been more perfect. I'm like, oh my God, we are magnets. We don't have, and that's the thing that the Course says in so many ways. When I don't know what to do, the thought goes through my head, and this is the Course speaking, I need do nothing. Because direction is always provided. We're always guided. We're not always aware that we are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. So I don't even know where to begin. I wrote so many things down here. Holy moly. I was like writing as fast as I could. And I can't really read what I'm writing. So that's even better. But I just want to go back for a moment. So something, and I've been saying this a lot lately in my interviews because it's something I'm noticing. And I'm wondering what your input on it would be. Um, like lately, I have been noticing that a lot of people who've had near-death experiences have had a lot of childhood trauma. And I'm noticing quite a pattern. I mean, not everybody has, of course, but a lot.
Mhm.
What do you think that that's about? Just in your opinion, just whatever comes to you.
For my experience, the things that happened, they melded perfectly with how my personality was created. So by the time I was 8, I was sure I was going to hell. Like, I was sure. So there's a couple things actually. One of the things that I suffered from for a long time was PTSD. And when you are a kid and you dissociate, you don't really know, and even when you're an adult, that can happen. You don't know. Um, but at one point, my consciousness left my body when I was a kid. And I think this is a guess. I don't know this. But I think that something like that needed to happen to create like almost like a portal or a pathway for me to, I don't want to use the word escape. That's not right. But a bridge was created
Yeah.
uh, during this experience.
Hmm.
But especially when you take a kid and um, expose them to like sexual trauma, there's great purpose in that. I wouldn't have had the experience that I had unless my story involved being in darkness. We don't come here to learn about what ecstasy is. Like, we are that. So once you've learned a certain amount about what you are, you can no longer learn anything more by studying what you are. You can only start studying what else there is. So if God is light and light is all there is, how does anything new get created? What's left? Like, the only way to get anything new would be to extend into darkness, which of itself doesn't exist, because what darkness is absence of light. So to really have an experience of contrast, you have to experience the darkness. And the way that I always have seen this is, if someone incarnates and what's available to them on an experiential level goes from like 0 to 10, so 0 being the worst and 10 being the best, they have like 10 experiential units that they're dealing with. But if someone incarnates and their scale starts at -10, they now have 20 experiential units to deal with. So when they live at -10 for a certain amount of time, you totally forget what it is to be at 5 or 6 or 3. And when you get to 0, the experience of 0 is so joyful that other people at 0 can't figure out why you're so happy. But it's because you're not in excruciating pain anymore. And like, if you think about it as the cycles of the year, people have greater issues with seasonal depression as the days get shorter. The sun is information, light and love are like very synonymous. So it makes sense. Like, the further we go into darkness, the more pain we experience. I think the thing that both my NDE and A Course in Miracles really emphasize is darkness doesn't really actually exist. Like, when we leave the physical body and our experience here has ended, it's no different than waking up from a dream. And you might say, like, oh, wow, that seemed really real. And it went on for so long, it seemed. But in eternity, like 70 years doesn't exist. So it wouldn't even be a second, like, we never leave. There is no here or there. There's only now and frequency. So, like, there's so many levels that this could be explained on, but like, I was like very hard and fast rational, A plus B equals C. Like, nothing else mattered except for math and science when I was in school. I didn't get exposed to any kind of like creativity of the right side of the brain, like, at all. But there was purpose in that, because now what ends up happening is, in the morning I get up and it feels like almost like I'm given this, like, I'll be given a word or a subject and it comes into my mind, and it's like the left mind receives it, and it's like it puts it on this fishing hook and casts it out into the right side of my mind, which is everything. And then the left side, the rational side, is quiet now. So it just reels in the answer. And I get this like I don't like to use the word download, because I think some people feel like, well, what's a download? I don't get downloads, but everyone gets understandings, you know? And we all have this capability. It's just that we're so stuck in the thinking mind and so stuck in thought And we don't realize that all of these thoughts that we entertain, that we use to torture ourselves, they actually are energies that are existing that are not us. And when we stop feeding those energies, they go somewhere else, like, because they want to be fed. Like, our the idea, was it the theory of relativity, that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. So when we eat food and we take in energy and we use it to, like, move the body and whatever, well, we also use it to have thoughts, and that is the most powerful thing that we have. It's the most powerful thing about us, because we don't understand this, because we don't control our reality with our thoughts. We control our reality with how we feel, with the feelings we embody. But if I'm entertaining really dense, lower vibrational thoughts, then I'm vibrating at a very low level. And those are the energies that I'm attracting to me. So it's how we feel in every moment that creates, that's the magnet that draws to us the experiences that the universe delivers. And they're all perfect based on the level that we're vibrating at. They can't not be perfect.
Why do you think we come here to Earth?
We come here to learn about love by experiencing what love is not. But that, I think, if you look at something like the Hindu Yuga cycle, it's a period of, I think, so the Yuga cycle is, I think there's other terms for it in other uh, philosophies, but it's a cycle with 4 parts, and each part, I think, is like 26,000 years or something like that. We just completed, and what it is it's an explanation of um, the separation of being, like, at one with the divine, at the top of the cycle, to then going further and further and further and further down into darkness,
Mhm.
until we reach, like, the furthest point away. And we reached that point in March of 2025. So from now going back towards being at one, we'll hear more about, all of a sudden, people being telepathic and all of these other abilities, clairaudience, clairsentience, clairvoyance, all of these things that beings once had. Um, there's a lot of information that is going to become available, like, it's available now, but on a more wide scale, uh, in the next, um, I mean, 2026 is supposed to be, like, pretty wild.
I heard that. I don't put dates to things. I just like to, but I
Mm,
did hear this. I've heard it from many different channelers and
mhm.
even mediums, right? They're even saying stuff like that. I don't know for sure, but I think something's about to happen. I just don't know what.
Well, it's weird. It's the law of correspondence, as above, so below, as within, so without. It's true on every level. Um, so I recently was guided to read the book Pistis Sophia, which it's said in some circles that it was one of the Gnostic texts found in Nag Hammadi in Egypt in 1945, with, like, the Gospel of Philip and the Gospel of Thomas, but it wasn't. It showed up to a book dealer in England in like, I think it was like the late 1600s. And it's the story of Jesus, Yeshua, appearing to his disciples after he had been crucified. And in the book, he taught them for 11 years. Uh, it's interesting because I can see this on so many different levels because different information has come to me over the period of years. And it started with understanding that in the West, we're not taught how human physiology works. So, what happened for me that awakened my Kundalini um, in June of 2020, the moon was in my sun sign. And if you know what that means, there is a process that happens in the human body, in the human brain, when the pituitary and when your pineal gland's not calcified, when your pineal gland is functional, those two things get together and create what's called Christ oil. And so there's a lot that's been misunderstood. And that leads me to just say I was only asked to remember one thing from experiencing gnosis and everything that there is. You can't fit that into a human brain because a human brain is like a limitation device, like a filter. And you
Mhm.
can't bring that all back at once. You would lose your mind. So the only message I was asked to retain was that Jesus did not come here for the reasons I was taught in church. And it's been really interesting because I couldn't really, in the beginning, I couldn't remember exactly what the answer was. I had to go on this journey of understanding. And I've really kind of come to see that I needed to do those things because if I just went from being in gnosis to then having this knowing, I wouldn't be able to show anyone the steps that I took to arrive at what I was already told, at what I already knew. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so like I was shown that I would pass over certain levels, like lower levels of astral like beings or whatever is uh, above us that doesn't have our highest good as an intention. Um, and I didn't realize that when my NDE happened, that was the purpose for me holding the miraculous medal and saying the word love and thinking of someone I loved so much. It cleared my consciousness of fear and took me like straight out of this realm into um, what I now understand uh, is very different um, than what can happen if you are having thoughts of fear. Like it's actually in like the Tibetan Book of the Dead and those things.
So what you're saying is, so our thinking can create what we end up seeing, or even where we end up going.
Our
So if I
thinking
had
creates
negative,
everything.
yeah, right?
Yeah.
So if
So
I
like
had a mind full of fear and I
mhm,
had an NDE, or say I was very religious and I was thought that um I was going to hell because maybe I did something in my brain thought, "Oh my god, I did that. I'm probably going to hell." So you have
mhm.
that thought. Are you saying that so if then I have, say, an NDE, there may be a chance that I end up in maybe a hellish kind of realm because of my thoughts?
Well, I know myself that all that matters is what you're thinking in the moment and moments. I mean, when I know from my experience,
Mhm.
but like if you read the Tibetan Book of the Dead or the Egyptian Book of the Dead, there's all these instructions because there's different like levels. And
There's the bardo, there's
yeah, the
all yeah.
bardos.
Mhm.
Yeah. But all it really is you're facing yourself. So on every level, like the way the split in the mind gets projected outward and the law of correspondence shows you like it starts in the mind, but it gets projected out. So every level, like if you watch the news or if you look at what's happening in the world, or it's like us versus them, like
That's
on
right.
so many different levels until you get out to the level of like angels fighting demons. Like the only thing you can fight is yourself, you know? Because once you understand that you are everything, like there's nothing needs to be defended.
I, stopped watching TV going on 14 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I don't subject we all of us, my whole
Mm,
family actually, we don't subject like my immediate, so my husband, myself, my 2 children, we don't subject ourselves to that. Anything that's
that's
on the
wonderful.
news, any type of
Yeah.
commercials, because I know what they all are, and I've known for a very, very long time. What we do is we're in charge of what goes in here.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's been quite a it's made such a difference in our lives, all of our lives. I
Mhm.
just don't pay attention to what's going on. Not that I don't care. Um, I've got better things to do.
Right.
I got better things to
Well,
think about. You know,
it's funny
it's negative.
the irony of the fact that Psalm 23 is read at funerals and what it's so it's kind of too it's past the point where the person can make the changes. But when it says the Lord is my shepherd, the sheep are our thoughts. You get to choose who the Lord is. Like, so you can either pick the voice of like the course calls it the Holy Spirit, but whatever you want to call it, it's either the voice of God or the voice of the ego. Um, who do you want to serve? The difference is pretty drastic when it comes to like the experiences you create. But the information we take in is a more important food source than the physical food that we eat, because we
Absolutely, I
consume
couldn't
it.
agree with you more. It's in every aspect of this life, everything I feel, just my own personal opinion, everything we consume in any way doesn't seem to be that great for us.
Mm.
Too much of anything also is not a good thing either, right? Um, yeah, when you look around and you look at all the things that are out there that are causing people such fear, it's like designed. That's what it feels like. Um, yeah, I just a lot of people live in fear. Very
Well,
a
yeah, I
lot of
mean,
fear.
I guess
Lot.
the point where I am now is that I want or when I pay attention to every thought that comes into my mind. I'm present for every word that I choose to use. And when I was learning how to have that presence, I had to say things that I didn't like. I would say, "Oh, I wish I didn't say that," because I could hear what I was saying. Um, but and of course now I totally forgot. I forgot what the point was. That's what happens in the now moment. It then just switches to the next now moment. The last one was gone.
I know exactly what you mean. And I told you earlier before when we started filming about the voice that came,
Yes.
and, you're thinking that proves something to me that night. It's not just, it really proved something to me because it was my thoughts. And then that voice came in
Mm.
and let me
Mm-hmm.
know. So I
Mm-hmm.
learned that I wasn't alone in my thoughts.
Oh, there are no private thoughts.
Right?
Yeah.
But that really dawned on me that night. And I literally, and if I did, I'll be honest. Right after that, I thought, what? I can't even have a minute alone? Like, I can't just think to myself without someone beating off. Like, really? Like, I
Yes.
never, ever, I'll be honest. It was the very first time I became aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like, whoa, whoa. Yeah,
Yeah.
I really felt that was interesting. I want to ask you a few other things. I just want to clarify one thing. You were holding on and you were breathing deep. You were saying love, Nana, and that thought of thinking of someone you love and saying the words
Well,
deep breathing.
it actually, there was no thought. I other than like
Okay.
the thought to say the word, I wasn't actually thinking about anything. But a word holds a certain vibration with whatever intent you give it. Um, so uh, my mind was actually clear. But had I left my body in a fearful state, because I didn't really have beliefs about heaven or hell, I would have seen my thoughts manifest. Because they're subconscious, I have no idea like you know, what they would have
Right.
been. But we'll see whatever we believe. So if you've read a book, that's why everyone says, "Oh, I saw gnashing of teeth." Like, but the thing is, you don't have to know what gnashing of teeth looks like as the human that you are. It's already stored, like, you know. So you'll get to see what that is, because you believe it.
Do you feel that you went to heaven then?
Uh Yes, actually. Well, one of the things, remember I had said that I didn't know why I had to call my friend Joyce. Um, I didn't talk with people very often at that time. And it wasn't decided that I was coming back. So I had to make those calls so that there would be someone that would check up and find the body because I don't know how long it would have been there. And
Uh,
yeah, so that's the only thing that I can think of. But people wake up in morgues. Like, we're, as humans, we don't understand that there's so much consciousness above us. We're at the bottom of it's like a paramecium, like a one-celled organism doesn't understand a human being. So as human beings, we're the paramecium. There's so many levels of understanding that we can't fathom. So we don't actually need human beings to bring us back. Um, like, and there's so many examples of that. But because the human that I was never exposed to anything like what happened, I didn't have the ability to believe what happened could happen. So I had to have it. Like, I had to have the experience. I was on the other side, literally saying, no one is ever going to believe this. And when I first came back into my body, I thought like I had a Course in Miracles and needed to study it because I was going to have to literally work miracles for anyone to believe that what happened actually happened. And the thing is now, like in thinking about talking with you today, um, I get so much more excitement over talking about things of this world now than I do about leaving it, that I could skip right over the NDE story. That's like, yeah, okay, that shows you there's something there. But we're here now for a reason. So like it seems like way more important to talk about like how we can all change ourselves here and now.
So a lot of times people are really afraid to leave here. They're scared. They
Oh,
don't know
yeah.
what's up there, right? So then they're on the path of like, I feel that one thing opens one door, then they go to the next thing, and then they can go to the next thing. And it's almost like they're trying to return to themselves. It's almost like they're trying to find themselves through all these different avenues of awakening. And then when they
Mhm.
get to this NDE part, it almost eradicates their fear when they start trusting and believing. I'll tell you it, that's
Right.
what it did for me. I can only speak for me.
Mhm.
And then I've seen it happen in others, but um, it's an important topic. But being here and living in the now is also a very important topic. You know,
Mhm.
both are I find both of them are equally important.
Well, I think like what you're saying is definitely it's definitely true. It There was a guy named Dr. David Hawkins. He did a lot of research on consciousness, and he's since passed, but he used to do a lot of talks and say, like go through a chain of fear, and ask someone like, okay, well, what's your biggest fear right now? And they might say, uh, oh, well, it's that I'll lose my job. And then he would say, okay, well, what will happen if you lose your job? And then the person goes through, well, then I wouldn't be able to pay my bills. And if I wouldn't be able to pay my bills, then I'll lose my house. And if I lose my house, I'll be homeless. And then if I'm homeless, like blah, 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 blah. Anyway, the end of the chain is, and then I'll die. And like, so the fear always ends in, and then I'll die. But when you no longer have fear of death, the whole chain breaks down because the end result is nil because we never die. So
I know. Yeah.
eliminating that,
Mhm.
eliminating that fear is so valuable.
Mhm. And that's why I see such value in all of the topics under the spiritual umbrella in every
Mhm,
way. Power of now, energy, thoughts create reality. All these
mhm.
topics. So I just kind of want to go back to that one last question there. The last question, when if it was a heaven-like realm, what did your body look like? Did you see anything? Did you feel like something different, or was it just you?
Uh,
Sometimes it's hard to explain.
it is interesting. The only being that I saw in a form that looked like human was my Nana. Uh, and she looked like she did when she was like young and healthy. I mean, she died at 59, so she
Wow.
wasn't that
Mhm.
old. But I wondered for a long time why I didn't see God. Um, because when I talked with God, instantly I knew that I knew God, that it was no different than having a conversation like in my head. Um, it, it was, it's so, it's weird because what I understand now, and I've never tried to explain this to anyone. Um, so bear with me. There, there's a lot of information that is becoming available about the earth
Mhm.
and people being like stuck in reincarnation, not being able to get out. And because I didn't listen to a lot of NDE stories for very long, like after my experience happened, um, I watched a bunch and I was looking out thinking like, oh, why couldn't have I had a life review, or why didn't this happen, or why didn't that happen? And I quickly realized that I didn't want anyone else's story. I like what was for me was perfect for me, but I had questions like, why didn't I go through a tunnel? Why didn't I see a light? Um, Someone had said something to me at one point about the significance of my meditating when I died. And what that did was it enabled me to pass over what people would call heaven. Like that we're in dimensions. So I don't know if like people talk about like a way station or like a place where they see lots of people. And I don't know if that's considered the seventh dimension.
Mhm.
But there's at least, if I had to guess today, because I don't know it, and actually it doesn't matter like exactly how it's arranged, but because it is my soul's last lifetime here, um it was already like pre-planned that I would pass over certain levels where I would have gotten stuck because I believed fully that I was worthless. Um, but there was a purpose for that. Um, and the one thing that I was told over and over again is that about the levels, don't focus on any stories. They're just soap operas, literally made for entertainment purposes. So, like, there's levels of awareness that are above a regular human's consciousness, if that makes any sense.
It completely makes sense to me. It does. It does.
So I can look at things and say, oh, it's a reincarnation trap. There's energies out there that are feeding off of human beings suffering, and this is just awful and whatever. And if I did say that, what that would mean is that there's something within me that I need to address, because everything is me. And what I think about it is about me. It's not about what I'm seeing as my reflection in the world, because all the world is a mirror. And if I think I need to change the world, it's like breaking the mirror, thinking that I can change my reflection rather than changing myself so that I reflect differently.
So, how did you talk to God? How does he
It
come
was just,
through
it
for
was
you?
all telepathic.
Mhm.
So it's weird because everything is so linear here and we use words. What I realized after this experience is, as a being, I am way more used to telepathy than I am with words. And even before I died, I think I said this, that I definitely said it after. I never really learned how to be a human very well. Like, that sounds crazy because I don't have memories of being anything other than human. I tried to do past life regression and I was shown nothing. Like,
Mhm.
and I understand that now, because at a certain level, people like to say, oh, I had this past life as so and so, but each of us is a unique frequency filter that has never been here before, nor can it be here again. So, what I understand is that I have access to every past life there's ever been, because if I let go of the human identity of Laura, I am everything.
I see. Very interesting you are. You are one deep thinker. Oh, you are a deep thinker. I could go on and on with conversations with you. I am not even kidding. You're making my brain just go, whoa. I love it. Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Oh,
Um,
you're welcome.
it's awesome, really. So
I didn't sleep for like 20 years before the NDE. That's probably why. That was my thinking.
oh my goodness. Have you ever what did I write here? It was important. Mm, right. So you were, and I don't want to offend you with how I'm saying this. Is it okay to say you were addicted to opioids and addicted to
Oh,
alcohol? Yes.
absolutely. Yeah.
So would you classify yourself as an alcoholic then? Or is that
I
like,
love that you've asked this question
okay,
because it is so important to me. Uh, so yes. Uh,
just wait. So I want you to talk about how did you get to that as well? And then I also had another question in that question pertaining to that.
okay.
Because when you become or have an addictive personality, they say, and I'm only merely going off of what I've read. I have never had that experience before. So I'm not sure, but
Mhm.
um, I sometimes feel like you were trying to get away from something, obviously, and so you were burying yourself in alcohol, opioids, and you were, you know, hiding from the pain of something. Is that correct?
So I'm going to start at the level of all illness is mental, all illness. Um, so when someone has like childhood trauma,
Mhm.
in order to survive, it has to go subconscious, like because just to function. And the way the brain is arranged, it just kind of does that when a kid is little. The body or the mind, I should say, the ego, um, keeps buried things that are intolerable. And what happens is this energy is in you, it's in your field.
Mhm.
And that creates dis-ease in your body if you don't know how to release it. So it manifested for me in many ways. I needed external validation
Okay.
from everyone for everything,
Okay.
everything. Um, but it also manifested in physical pain, lots of physical pain. Like my spine crumbled, but that wasn't even like there were so many other little things, autoimmune, Hashimoto's disease, Raynaud's disease, IBS, like migraines, all of these things. Um, when you're in it, you never feel like you're doing something to suppress. You're just immersed in your daily life.
Mhm.
Um, and by the time you realize like you're self medicating, it's probably way too late.
Mhm.
But the thing is, it's perfect. I would not have chosen, like, for the longest time, I would say as Laura, I wouldn't have chosen addiction. I understand why my soul chose it for what I would learn, but as Laura, I wouldn't choose it. Well, Laura now would choose it because it's the greatest gift I've ever been given. So every human being has experience with addiction. Everyone does. We just don't know that. The biggest addiction is to our human identity. And if we didn't suffer when we lost it, there would be no dark night of the soul. So we all know what it is to be addicted. But when you take a chemical addiction or like a behavioral addiction that wreaks havoc in your life, what that does is now, if we're here to remember who we are and we are God, we have no idea what it means to serve. Because we don't need anything. How could we learn what it means to serve? Because we are everything and everything's instant on the other side. But when we come here and we incarnate into perceived lack, we learn different coping mechanisms.
Right.
The reason I say addiction teaches us how to be a servant is we become a servant of the drug. So the drug becomes God, and we become devoted to our God. It's just, so literally, it clears everything out of your life except for that one thing.
I see.
When you take that and apply it to having purpose that is useful and creates, like I can make anything, but the definition of create involves God coming through me. To create, I need to serve the one and be a servant for the one. So what the drug has taught me is that literally nothing matters but doing what I'm meant to be doing. And at that time of addiction, what I was meant to be doing was being addicted. It's only our human judgment that says that was wrong.
What do you think about the thought of God, source, whoever you want, anybody calls it, um, learning and living through us and experiencing life through us? Like we're actually God, and he's experiencing life through us. What do you think of that thought?
It's interesting because we have so many ideas and misconceptions about what God is, or at least I grew up with that God was this like exalted, basically human being that was an angry father.
Yeah.
But God just observes.
Yeah.
Like God is, I guess I know this because it was explained to me by God, or I don't really like to use the word God.
You can use whatever words you like.
Well, calling it source or the all that is feels more accurate to me. But it was explained to me that every part of me was perfect. I just didn't know what anything was for. So it's interesting because now that I've let go of so much judgment, I get to experience God in a different way.
Right.
And it's I can't put it into words. Like for someone who lived a life that was so full of sadness and pain, I can cry daily now. Like and it's not crying. It's like there's a difference between crying and weeping.
That's right.
And it's like I weep in gratitude
Me.
that I get to have this experience.
Yeah.
Like it's so incredible. Now, if I was stepped back and took the viewpoint of God, God doesn't have that like, oh, this is so incredible. It just is, you know? Um, so it really is such a neat thing to understand, to be awareness, but to also get to experience the thoughts of that awareness. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to put into words, but I have this feeling that the human race is going to come up with a lot of new vocabulary because there's so many positive feelings we don't have words for yet.
Do you feel that humanity is waking up? Do you see a shift?
I would not be able to not see the shift or not feel it. What's weird is when things line up, like on 11/11, November 11th, I was driving to my job and the odometer on my car hit 11,011 miles. The moon was in my sun sign and there was an aurora that night. And I was like high as a kite half the day. And I say this all the time too, because the human brain is the greatest chemical factory that was ever made. When we take out what doesn't belong in there or what was put in there to give us a different experience, we can feel states of being that are just simply incredible. But mentioning the word high, I just want to say one thing about the question you asked about being an alcoholic.
Yes.
So I was in a 12-step recovery program for many, many years. And for many, many years, I struggled in that program. And after my experience, I came back, and this program was such a blessing to me because it became where I spoke of this. And the people that were surrounding me listened to my confusion, and nobody judged it. Some people were interested, other people were clearly not. And that was okay too. But I'll never forget the day that I realized, and this happened while I was speaking in a meeting. I realized that I was more comfortable identifying myself by saying, "Hi, I'm Laura, I am a disease," than I was by saying, "Hi, I'm Laura, I'm love." Like I went on kind of a journey where I realized I was doing affirmations every morning and saying like, I am strength, I am beauty, I am wisdom. And then I would go into a meeting and say I was an addict. Like that didn't make any sense to me. And so then I started saying I'm sober.
Yeah.
And I became aware that even that, when I started saying it, it was like I could see myself like on a
Oh
stage
no.
screaming it and putting my hands above my head, thinking like what a wonderful thing it was and what a miracle it was. But after a certain point, I realized that every time I said that, I was bringing my mind back to the past. After a certain period of time of saying, I'm Laura, I'm sober, I realized that I could no longer even say that because calling myself sober, um, it mentally connected me with a past version of myself. And I
Mm-hmm.
would never be free of the addiction if I continued to go back to the past. And it wasn't that I was using, it was just that um, my mind was creating a lot of associations. And so I started introducing myself and saying, I'm Laura, I am love. And it was really uncomfortable. And even when I said I'm sober, there were people in meetings that like yelled at me, then told me that I had to say, like this or that. And um, And I knew that whatever it was that was upsetting them wasn't about me, it was about them.
Absolutely.
But eventually I knew that I couldn't continue with this program and A Course in Miracles because the ideas were just too different.
Hmm.
And now it's been years since I've been in anything. Like the thought of recovery it's just not in my mind because
Hmm.
like over a period of years, like I stopped eating processed foods. Like,
Yeah.
I stopped eating meat, like all of these different things. Like last summer was the first year that well, 2 summers ago, I started growing my own
Hmm.
vegetables, like all of these things. And as you become happier and happier and you embody higher levels of joy, the idea of putting a depressant in you is not appealing at all. Like alcohol
Exactly.
wouldn't do anything for me,
Mm.
except give
I
me a
haven't
headache.
drank for, oh, I don't even know. I mean, I never really was a drinker, but I'm just saying I haven't drank alcohol and I think over 4 years. Yeah,
It's not, it's it's about the vibration we hold. Like
that's
I
it.
remember I could create that feeling in my body very easily
Hmm.
that was so uncomfortable that I needed to do something to eliminate it. But once that feeling is no longer there, it's like if you had a headache every day and you would take an aspirin, but when the headache disappears, you forget the aspirin, you know? Um, but there's a lot of programming in our culture surrounding how recovery works or
Yes.
doesn't work, and
Yeah.
that you can never heal once you've been addicted. And that's just not true.
I don't believe that. Someone in my family sent me one of the most really beautiful things I've ever actually heard about addiction, being very spiritual. I should send it to you and just to get your thoughts on it. I was blown away when she goes, "Well, what do you think of this?" And I thought, "Oh my God, I love it."
Mm.
Actually, it was, I think, the first time I ever thought I might have understood addiction.
Hmm.
Honestly, she just sent that to me last week. Yeah. And because I'm talking only drug addiction. I've never known how that feels. So it's hard to, when someone's going through it, to empathize with how they're feeling when you don't know. So I had said
Hmm.
that to her, and then she said, "Here, let me send you this." And when I listened to it, I was like, "Oh, now I get it." It was
Yeah.
very interesting, but it's really cool. I'm going to send that to you. I
Oh,
would just
yeah.
be curious what you would
Love
think.
to see it. Yeah.
I have one really good question here. For those who are watching who are living in chronic pain or facing any type of addiction, what do you think you would be able to say? Like, what would you want them to hear, actually? What would you want them to hear?
Hmm. Well, that that's a tough one
Yep.
because pain is why I'm present now. Pain, that like very literally, pain is what brought me into every present moment. So if I didn't live in pain even after my NDE, it would have taken me so much longer to begin the process of learning how to let my heart lead me. So what happened was uh, I got a suggestion to start paying attention to my heart energy. And I learned how to keep my awareness in my heart so that my heart would lead and my brain would be behind it and not the other way around. It's like Joe Dispenza talks a lot about
Oh, yeah.
heart brain
Yeah.
In the synchronization
Oh, I
process.
love
Well,
him.
the synchronization process can be very painful, but I guess so. The most important thing I think that I could say to anyone is that the pain they're in has a purpose, and they always have a choice. Like,
Mm.
choosing to be joy right now may not cure chronic pain instantly, but every condition that the body has is the result of a process, and the process starts with thinking. So pay attention to the thoughts that come into
Absolutely.
the mind. Like, it's hard when you're in chronic pain, you don't want to be present in your body. Like, I didn't feel anything a lot of the time, like, because I was so shut off to how my body felt like a prison.
Mhm.
Um, but the
Was there
more
anything that helped you at all before your NDE that wasn't, like for someone that's in chronic pain, do you think that maybe meditation or a certain book or something could help them?
uh
I'm not sure. I'm just
I
putting
mean,
it out there.
I'm always a big proponent of A Course in Miracles, but that text is very, very dense, and you have to be at a point where
Yeah.
you're so uncomfortable that you become willing. Um, so nobody has to take the elevator to the bottom floor. You get off where you get off. Um, but the thing is, everyone's journey is already perfect. So the shift for me, I was given the suggestion um, when I was in the hospital that December. Uh, I had already decided to start saying yes to everything, like things that I would have said no to. So when I was admitted, they said, "Do you want a visit from the chaplain?" And my ego was like, "Ugh, no." but I said yes. So the chaplain came by, and she was super nice. And before that, I had been told, like, by a couple people, "You need to get a spiritual director." And I had no idea what one was. So I asked her about if she knew any spiritual directors. She connected me with someone who was a spiritual director. And after I got released from the hospital, I had a meeting with this person. And the one suggestion she gave me was to start a gratitude box and every morning get up and write down like 5 or 6 things that I was grateful for. And I had already done a God box, which was something this kind of answers your question. It was something that a sponsor of mine in my recovery program told me to do over and over and over and over and over, and I didn't do it um, until finally I became willing because of pain, like, and I did it. A few months after my NDE, I opened this box and I looked at everything that was in there. I kept it in the order that I wrote it in. And I realized I had gotten everything that I asked for in the order that I asked for it. So it was like when the idea of the gratitude box came up, I was like, "Oh, absolutely, I'll do that."
That's
So
a good idea.
I was definitely on board. So I wrote down every day for at least it was a year probably. I started every day, but the thing was with gratitude, the thing was within 2 to 3 weeks, I saw this person, this spiritual director, like 2 or 3 times a month apart. Long before my second visit, my thinking had already changed on its own. Like, what happened was I remember driving home with groceries in the car, and I was tired and I thought, "Oh, I don't want to put these away." And when I got in the house, I opened the cabinet and I saw, like, wow, I have so much food in there and I haven't even put the stuff away yet. Some people don't have food. Like, I'm so blessed. And another time I dropped something on the floor under my chair, and like, where these thoughts came from, I don't know. But I dropped something under my pen or whatever it was under the chair. So I got down on my hands and knees and I grabbed it and I sat back down. And I thought, wow, someone who was blind wouldn't have been able to find that like really easily, but I have eyes and I can see. Like, that's so wonderful. Like,
Huh.
those kinds of thoughts started to happen. And so that was one suggestion that was really important for me. But the thing is, everyone's life is already set up perfectly. Like, maybe seeing your podcast is what it is that is the spark
There
that
we
turns someone, you know what I mean? Um, so the only suggestion that I can make is being present in the now moment. I was never present. I was daydreaming. I was thinking about the past. I was projecting into the future. I was never here.
I am happy you are now. I'm very
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here with you right now.
thank you. Laura, for those that want to learn more from your journey, do you have any offerings or services or published works you would like people to know about?
I do not. The only
I
I
wasn't
have no like agenda except for pure joy, the embodiment of it. Um, so if people want to reach out to me, Facebook is
oh,
the easiest way. Uh,
okay.
I stopped
Love that.
using email a year or two ago. And I don't really do social media just because like Facebook gets enough of my time.
Yeah,
So I don't need more.
I hear you on
Um,
that. I really, really do.
yeah,
Yeah.
but
So I will make sure that I have that in the description box for you, and people can reach out to you through Facebook. So,
excellent.
my very last question, it's going to be a hard one.
Okay.
If you could leave a message for humanity, one truth that you learned from your near death experience, what would that be?
There is only one thing that matters, and it's the reason I came back. It's what 100% of my focus is invested in now. Um, because what I create with it, I take with me and I leave behind, and that is love.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Laura, I cannot thank you enough for being here and sharing something that is actually so sacred to your journey, your path, and your pain, surrender, your rebirth carries a resonance that I know will stay with people long after they finish watching this. And it's been an absolute honor having this conversation with you today.
Well, thank you. The pleasure's been all mine. Uh,
You're welcome.
it's been such a joy to talk with you.
Thank you.
I'm so glad we
So,
connected.
me too. You're, you're not, this is not the last we're going to talk. I can tell you that right now.
Excellent, excellent. I look forward to more conversations.
Right? Such a good one. Oh, I know. I loved it. Thank you so, so much. To
Thank
everyone
you.
watching, you're welcome. To everyone watching, may this story remind you that even in our darkest moments, there is more happening than we can actually see. We are guided, supported, and deeply loved, even when we forget. And until next time, stay open, stay curious, and keep returning to the truth within you.